Okay, so anybody that's not familiar with MMA and combat fighting, just so you know, these guys represent world-class athletes, part of our series on world-class athletes and their supplementation, a little bit of story and background. These guys represent, if you're familiar with the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball, these guys represent that level of class in the MMA combat world. So what I wanted to start with a little bit was for you guys to introduce yourselves, kind of just go a little bit into your backgrounds of how you get into combat fighting, since most people don't like getting kicked in the head and punched in the face for a living. See what it was your, full disclosure, Chris is my brother-in-law, so I know a little bit more of his story, but I'm gonna have Chris introduce himself, give a little background, how he found his long weaving way into combat fighting.
Well, my name is Chris Cariaso. I first started fighting. I first started training when I was like 6 years old. I've always been in martial arts ever since I was a kid. So, just kind of being involved in martial arts all the time was kind of kept me somewhat disciplined.
But at that point, you didn't have any idea that you were going to UFC.
I was 6 years old.
Right.
You know what I mean? I wanted to be Bruce Lee, actually.
Something fun to do.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to be Bruce Lee. I was like, I'm going to do what he was doing. I remember I told my dad that.
He just did a lot of screaming and posing for the camera.
Yeah, I know, but he was good at it.
I was a big Karate Kid fan. Karate Kid and then the Three Ninjas.
Yeah. Then I found a Muay Thai gym in Arizona, kind of all random all places, and I met these Thai guys who ended up being like world champion Muay Thai fighters.
That was in Phoenix, right?
This was in Phoenix, yeah. And I started training with them, and kind of found out that they're like the UB of their sport. So I was like, got really lucky, like be able to train with them and learn, and just started. And I actually did a couple of amateur Muay Thai fights, like when I was a kid.
Right.
Got freaking beat up.
And now, did you find a mentor there that kind of took you under his wing and said?
Well, no, I was just training with Bunker the whole time. Okay. Yeah, with that first.
You want to explain who Bunker is?
Bunker, yeah. So if you don't know who Bunker is, the name is Bunker Fakimai. He's been my trainer since I was 11 years old, he from Thailand. He's a former Lumpini champion, Rajadamnern Stadium champion. So kind of like a badass, yeah. Basically the highest level, the highest level fighters fight in those stadiums. So
those guys that fight 200 times a year or more.
And Booker actually has like over 400 fights.
Yeah.
So he says so many fights. He says he lost count. He doesn't know. So
he's lost count of a lot of things.
He says lost count of a lot of things.
They have a lot of fights in a lot of stadiums. Those guys are like you said, the NBA, the NFL.
Yeah.
And those guys start off as young kids, supporting their family as fighters.
Exactly.
People gamble on it and all kinds of stuff over there.
Yeah, I was watching a thing on fighting in Thailand, and they actually have Fight Club, computer worker guys over in Thailand. They meet up and they fight. No prize, no refs.
Right.
No, they have real Fight Club. Just they're all happy to do it. Fight Club does exist.
So was there a moment for you, Chris, where you thought, I'm pretty good at this, or did you just kept grinding and just
it was just fun. Yeah, I was doing it for fun, and it was helping me for when I was racing BMX.
Right. Which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
BMX career, your old career.
Yeah, exactly. Then I was doing good in BMX because of fighting. So, and then we the gym closed down, and I kind of came back, and in that time, injured myself.
Right.
And wasn't racing BMX anymore, and was just trying to come back. So just started to get back into Muay Thai again and get back in shape and get strong. And then next thing I know, I'm like, hey, I should try to compete or something. It'd be kind of fun to box.
Now, did you start in Muay Thai fighting? Is that what you started in?
Yeah, I started when I was a kid in Muay Thai, and then when I came back, I was trying to get a Muay Thai fight, but it just really wasn't happening. So I jumped into amateur boxing.
Okay.
I started doing some amateur boxing.
And that was still in Phoenix?
No, this is in.
Or had you already gone to San Francisco?
This is in the Bay Area.
In the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So we kind of skipped ahead.
Sure. Okay, so where was the transition period for you where you said, I'm gonna try this MMA, or did you just try it at a whim at first and then?
Yeah, I was kind of doing some boxing and stuff when I was about 19 or 20.
That was when MMA was started to
Right.
take off.
Right.
There was
Yeah, back in the
money
early
was
time,
there.
MMA
Yeah.
was kind of a niche sport. Now
Yeah,
it's becoming
super
more
niche,
mainstream.
And I actually remember back in like, I think it might have been like 20, it was like in 1999-ish, right? I remember like seeing an MMA fight, thinking to myself, no way, dude, no way, I'm not doing that, right? And I actually did a couple of jiu-jitsu classes back then too,
Yeah.
with Jake Shields. Jake Shields taught me a jiu-jitsu class like back in '99.
Nice.
Taught me that earthquake-ish, the thing that Chucky does. Yeah. So anyway, you know, I was like, no way, I'm not doing.
Okay.
I'm just doing Muay Thai.
Mhm.
And then, you know, years go by, it's like 2005 now, and MMA is just like exploding, taking off, right?
Now, when did you open your gym in San Francisco?
I opened my gym in San Francisco in 2004.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah, 2004. Just wrote that down today.
It's been-
So you were running the gym.
Running the gym.
Fighting,
I was just training, fighting amateur stuff, and then you know, I kind of wanted to turn pro for Muay Thai. Felt like I won the Golden Gloves and won some amateur titles that I wanted to get before I turned pro. So then I was like, I'm gonna turn pro Muay Thai. And then right there is like the transition where it just went, Muay Thai was gone and everything was MMA.
Okay.
And then a matchmaker like approached me and was like, hey, you want to fight? And I was like, no, man, I'm a Muay Thai guy. He's like, nah, dude. He's like, I'll get you a striker. And I'm like, no. He goes, well, how much you want? And, you know, back then I was probably getting like $500
Right.
to fight a pro Muay Thai fight.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So Casey rolling his eyes. He's like, you were fighting for $500.
Yeah, no,
My first fight was 300.
Yours was in the backyard.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's true. That's true. I fought for free a lot.
yeah, but we did it for free. So then I got so then I said, how much you want? So I go, I want $2,500. He goes, done. And I was like, shit. And then next thing you know, like the card was like, you know, 3 months later. So then I was like, I gotta learn jiu-jitsu, right? So went to house and I was doing a little jiu-jitsu with Darren back then. You remember Darren, right? And I was doing at Rock Gracie. I was doing jiu-jitsu there, and that's when I met Kurt. You know,
Now, was at the time the Bay Area a pretty big area for the MMA world? I mean,
you know, there was.
or was there no such thing as a
It was
mecca?
like it was not really a mecca anywhere because, like, for instance, it was new, right? Like there was. Like the UFC didn't even have 155 pounders in it. It was
Right.
170 and up
Right.
back then, right? And then they introduced 55s, and then so that was kind of like it was just like starting to really become like a sport, yeah. And then I think right around 2005, Strikeforce had their first event, and I remember it was sold out. We were trying to get in, and out the promoter, promised me tickets because I used to fight on his kickboxing shows.
Okay.
Before he did Strikeforce.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
for those that don't know, Strikeforce is basically like there was the UFC that obviously that started it all. Then there was
the feeder
ones that started to come up. And
generations, yeah.
Strikeforce actually was like more like kickboxing and Muay Thai, right?
Yeah.
Before,
Yeah.
and then they added like their roots came from the kickboxing Muay Thai world. They were big in that. I think more kickboxing than Muay Thai, right?
More kickboxing.
More kickboxing than Muay Thai, but they were a big world-renowned kickboxing organization, and then they brought in really good MMA fighters that were. They opened it up for the littler guys first, because like you said,
Right.
it was.
So this is more of trial by fire for you first getting in there, just
Right.
winging it.
Winging it, yeah. I'm just winging it, thinking like, oh, dude. I remember the first time I remember thinking to myself, they locked the gate, and I was like, oh shit. Here we are, right? And then I remember obviously I didn't know how to wrestle, and then at that moment, this is funny because my wife was like, oh my god, he has cauliflower ear.
Oh,
congratulations.
Oh, he has cauliflower ear. He's gonna take you down. And I was like, oh shit. She's like, Darren. But he was like my corner man at the time, and he's like, Darren, like,
Don't let him get taken
don't
down.
let him get taken down. Is he gonna be okay? Darren's like, yeah, he's gonna be fine.
So how'd that fight turn out?
It was good. It was a decision. I got taken down like right off the bat, and then I beat the snot out of this guy after that. Like,
Picked him up. picked him up over his head.
Yeah,
He's like, "Ah!"
exactly. He slammed me on the ground, and then I remember thinking to myself, like, dude, I felt like I was in like the playground, for school, And then after the fight, I remember I was like so pumped up. I was like, dude, I gotta do that again, dude. And I just kept going.
So you got the bug for it.
Got
And
the
for people
bug.
that don't know, Chris then proceeded to go to the WEC,
Uh-huh.
which was for the lighter weight class guys.
Right, that was
Were you-
WC. And
Were you 135 there or 125?
I was 135 pounds, yeah.
And then UFC then basically
Yeah.
absorbed the WEC, which is,
and
Swept
Strikeforce
you.
too.
Yeah.
They absorbed it all.
and then for people that don't know, Chris proceeded to go all the way through his career up to that picture up there that shows him fighting Mighty Mouse over there for the world title in Las Vegas. Pinnacle of the career.
Yeah.
And then for people that don't know, Chris is now retired, runs these gyms, and has moved over to coaching Casey here. And let's go a little bit into your background. You started off in Indiana, correct?
Yep, started off in Indiana, small town Indiana, and 5 years old, I had my first sleepover. My friend happened to be in judo, him and his dad. There was a family of black belts in the small town, and I went and watched and came back home and was like, this is what I want to do. Told my parents to take me to practice, take me to practice.
Because your background was in judo.
Right,
Yeah.
judo. And for those who don't know, that's more like grappling, jiu-jitsu, wrestling style techniques and stuff.
No striking.
No striking. So I started judo, and then started wrestling also at the age of 8. So I started competing in judo a year later at like 6. So pretty much been competing and
Now,
training.
do you have any siblings? Or is
No,
it just you?
only
Okay,
child.
so- okay.
Only child, yep.
So you were full throttle right from the
full
beginning.
throttle right from the beginning, and it probably leveled me out.
Uh-huh.
In the real world too, and I
Right.
didn't even know it. But
Right.
there hasn't been a time that I can remember that I haven't been training martial arts,
Right.
Or hand-to-hand combat.
Now, were you full on judo for a while, or?
I was both,
Okay.
but judo was my main sport. Like about 9 years old, I started doing really well. I placed at my first nationals. And at 10, I won my first national tournament in judo.
Right.
And then that was also when the weight cutting began.
Okay.
A little young, and I wouldn't recommend it for anyone.
Yeah.
But I was a little.
Cutting weight at 10.
Yes, I did it. Well, I was shorter,
What were
pudgier.
Were you trying to go from the 65 to the 60 pound
Uh,
class or something? Well, I remember I was in high school. All the wrestlers would wear
Right.
the rubber tracksuits and run out on the track before they.
But ironically, I started learning about weight cutting and rehydrating and all that at that age too.
Yeah.
Quick little story about that. I made weight. It was all right. Went to dinner with the whole team. I'm inside on like a 10-person booth, and I pound like 4 lemonades. No one said a word to me. Right? No one said a word to me. I had no idea. And about a few minutes later, just all those lemonades came out over the whole table. And I was like, that was my first lesson of cutting
Now,
weight.
with judo, did you guys weigh in the day before?
So we weighed in the day before.
Oh, still?
Right,
Okay.
yep, still. Normally the day before, then you had the whole day to kind of come back. And some wrestling tournaments were like that, too,
Okay.
like off season.
Because
High
when I
school,
was young, I
college.
remember that wrestlers would do that, but then they made a law that they had to weigh in right before their match,
Right.
so that high school kids weren't cutting a bunch of weight.
Right, which that
And
didn't
problem.
stop anything. That didn't stop anything. I cut the most weight ever in my life in high school. And but anyway, so 10 years old, started judo, won big tournament, and was kind of hooked. And then I was also wrestling just for fun,
Right.
team little nice little team thing, and it complemented my judo.
Sure.
Went on to basically, judo was my thing. I was placing, if not winning nationals every year. Started, meeting some of the elite guys around the United States,
Right.
and
At the time, were you following the UFC and all that kind of stuff? Or
not
you were
then.
just tunnel vision
Yeah.
on judo at the time.
Tunnel vision on judo. Actually, I wanted to be an Olympian.
Okay.
That was my goal.
Okay.
And kind of switched gears later on in high school. Once I realized that there wasn't really much college opportunity for judo. There was a little bit here and there, but by the time I got to college, there was like nothing for judo.
Right.
I got recruited to go to the Olympic Training Center, but
You just didn't see a career after school.
right. The Olympic Training Center could give me like in-state tuition for college, but they didn't have any actual scholarships.
Okay.
And the offer I got from wrestling at a division, I got a few offers, but at this Division II school, got between academics and wrestling, I got a full ride to college. And then we set off into college, and well, sorry, let me back up a little bit here. So how I got into MMA was high school. I pretty much became like a diehard UFC fan.
Okay.
Go every weekend. The friends I had, like some of their parents even had pictures of UFC fighters in their house, like they were fans too.
And that was back before it was on every weekend.
Right.
Like big
Right, you'd
events,
have
you had to wait
like
for the big
exactly.
event.
You'd have like it was an
year,
event. You
something like that.
10 events a year type of thing.
Right.
So, and we started, had wrestling mats in their house. And we started bringing gloves and doing UFC fights after the fights. And then that was when
Those are some of the free fights?
those were some of the free fights. That was when I realized that hey, this is kind of fun. I like hitting people.
I'm the
too.
last one standing at my own party.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Like I could always out wrestle, and even the guys that knew how to wrestle, I knew judo, so I knew arm locks and chokes at the time too.
Right.
So I would, these guys, they knew how to wrestle, but they didn't know how to not get choked or not get armbarred. So I was always one up on them, anyways. And then I was always southpaw, and
Right.
so I'd come out and touch gloves and wing my left hand and surprise people. So.
So how did you make the transition to then Tucson?
Well, so then I had my first 2 actual MMA fights without any MMA training.
Right. Okay.
I just signed my scholarship to go to college, and I was hanging out with some friends, and it was 3 days before the event. I knew the promoter, and my friends talked me into doing an actual MMA fight.
Okay.
I wasn't going to do it because I just signed the national letter of intent
Right.
to go to school.
Was this a paying thing?
No.
Okay.
So it was an amateur. It wasn't
Okay.
paying.
Okay.
So it would have been okay, but I still didn't think my college wrestling
I
coach
think it was too funny.
right.
Yeah.
To go do an
Yeah.
MMA fight. Like I signed it like 2 days before this, and I went out and I beat the crap out of the dude, knocked him out with a suplex, and
Isn't that a WWE move?
like that's a wrestling move. It's another wrestling move. Basically, where you take somebody and slam them on their head behind your back. It's a freestyle wrestling move, and I'd been competing for a long time, and I never felt something quite like that. And there was
Seeing somebody go unconscious? Or?
but it was another form. It was an even greater form of competition than I had ever been a part of.
Right.
Like, I always say fighting's the purest form of sport that
Sure.
you can find, and I've been a competitor my whole life.
Now you just open up a bunch of different avenues of different stuff that you need to learn
Right.
versus just wrestling and judo.
Right, exactly, and and I did all the team sports and stuff growing up, but nothing quite was ever like an individual sport like wrestling or judo.
Right.
And then I got wrestling and judo on steroids, which was MMA, and and then my original plan was to go to college, get a degree,
Right.
pursue
Sure.
MMA. Started going to college, and I got good grades, but I was there to party and wrestle.
Yeah.
I got good grades because I had to, but had my second fight in the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, and I went and wrestled for a year in college and got way bigger, way stronger, and way better at wrestling.
Yeah.
And then just came back and pretty much dominated. Some kid took him down, beat him up, stopped the fight, and then went back for my sophomore year. And that was when I redshirted that year, and I was partying a little harder than I probably should have been, and I got into a scuffle with the baseball team.
As in the baseball team. Not
Team.
just a baseball player.
Baseball team, right? And I kind of got the better of them on a Thursday night, and they weren't too happy. And me and the baseball team and the wrestling team, a few football players, got into a big team on team brawl on a Saturday night, and that didn't go so well. This
Administration didn't think that was too.
didn't think that was too hot, so I didn't get kicked out of school, but I basically had to sit out the rest of the year, and I could come back next year with scholarship and all that. So I finished school, but in that time I was 19, thought I knew everything, and I was going to go take on the world in Arizona, become a fighter.
Well, why Arizona?
I had family here.
Oh, you did.
I had
Okay.
family here. Yep, I had an
Okay.
aunt and uncle who had moved out here, and then it's basically just upped and moved. Grabbed a couple bags,
Yeah.
moved in with my aunt and uncle, and then
Now, is that when you met Chris here in Tucson, or?
yeah, that's when I met Chris in Tucson. But there was a little period because the first week I moved here, actually Rise wasn't even open at the time. Like we ironically moved.
2011 or 12 or
2012.
12.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this was February of 2012.
okay.
So like
Yeah, I
Was-
opened in like July
yeah.
or August that year.
So I signed up for a trial class at some other gym in Tucson, and we went and played basketball that night with my cousin. Completely blew out my ACL and my meniscus. First,
Starting off your
starting
MMA
off
career?
my big move to become an MMA fighter. Completely blown ACL, and they had to take part of my meniscus out. And honestly, that was my first major injury in sports, and it was.
and it's a big one.
It's a big one. It made me not feel so invincible anymore.
Right.
But
Right.
that was, that was a turning point in my really in my life and my my mindset. About training and all that stuff. It's like, okay, maybe I'm not so invincible.
Yeah, because I can even remember as far back as 2012, 2013, Chris and my sister Sam, we got this young guy who's at the gym,
Yeah.
Casey Kenney, and he's going to be somebody
Yeah.
in fighting.
And,
I mean, that was way back when you first started here.
I still have a
They could see
pretty like invincible mindset type thing, but.
Well, you got to have a little bit of it to do the sport you're doing.
Right. But now where I'm at, I take that, but I'm just a little bit smarter.
Yeah.
Before then, it was like I was smart, like I could, learn. I wasn't a dumb kid, but I was reckless with my body as far
Sure.
as like this is always going to be just fine.
Right.
So now, and even the older I get, the smarter I train, type of thing. So, anyways. Basically lived in the pool. As soon as I could start walking again, I started working. Just minimum wage jobs around here. And then that was when I met Chris and, started training here and doing
That
all
was
that
right
stuff.
about the height of your career, kind of coming up.
Yeah, I think it was right after you fought Moraga. That's when I came in. Which was the last like 6-7 fights you had in the UFC.
Yeah.
I was here.
Yeah.
So I started training, and then that was when also he offered me a job.
Right.
And pretty much didn't leave the gym after that.
You still haven't left the gym.
Still haven't left. He always joked. He's like, I was in here so much that he had to give me a job.
Yeah.
And it worked out. Started teaching the kids program and doing lessons, working the front desk, and then even was considered the manager of Rise Combat Sports when he was doing his, the end of his career type of thing.
Now, how did you finally get the call up from the UFC? Because I remember you were in their TV show, at least twice, weren't you?
Yeah, and I mean,
Coming
I got a few calls. Like, basically from the time I was 5-0 to I got signed at 11-1-1.
Right.
So there's 8 fights there that it could have happened anytime, and it should have happened.
Is it just that?
Any of those.
Is there just that many people in your weight class, or is it?
Weird transition.
It's weird transitions. I never got that highlight finish until the final one.
Right.
And they cut my weight class. Well, they said they were going to.
Right.
So I was the number 1 prospect in the world
Right.
at 125 pounds for
So
a
is there no
couple years.
125 anymore?
There is.
Oh, okay.
There wasn't going
But
to be.
Oh, okay.
the time that I was getting into the UFC, which was like a year gap, they basically were like, we're not signing anybody.
Oh,
We're just
okay.
like, we're getting rid of it.
Okay.
And then I got in, and then 5 months later, it's like, hey, you want to move down to 125 again?
Okay.
See you later. See you later. Right? No, thank you. So it was a weird transition,
Yeah.
but I'm happy.
Yeah.
The way it
Why don't you
worked
tell
out.
everybody about your your fall during the COVID and going back and forth to Dubai a few times or
Oh yeah,
for your fights.
Yeah, so October was a great month. Started off really this whole summer, into the summer, into fall was good. Basically rattled off 3 wins in the UFC. Fought October 4th and put on one of my best performances yet, and basically got the opportunity to make a quick turnaround. Which, for those who don't know, normally you fight 3 to 4 times a year. It's a busy year for a fighter, and I did 2 in a month.
Right.
So that was
including going back and forth to Dubai both times.
including doing the flight. I forget. I tallied up how many hours I was in the air in October, and it was like. It was
Well, how soon did they notify you after your
75
first
hours.
fight in Dubai? Were you already back here?
So I had the option to stay.
Okay.
I already knew about it before I left.
Stay a month or something? Or
Yeah, but I would have been on Fight Island for like 30 some days, and
going stir crazy?
yeah, they had stuff for us to do, but it was still a
Yeah.
bubble that you're locked in, and I didn't. None of these coaches I could ask to stay that long with me.
Yeah,
I would have been fine. So I basically would have been there by myself anyway. So. Flew back, got about a week of training, tried to
I
get
wouldn't
back.
have been able to stay. Just Jim would have been.
Yeah. I might have had to house some coaches after we got back too. I'd be like, my guys, you're staying, but all my coaches lost their wives, and so it was.
I mean, is it still kind of? Because I can remember back in Chris's career that, like, if Dana White says you want to fight in a month, it's kind of one of those things you don't want to say. No, or do you have to feel it out to decide if it's okay to say no?
This one in particular, I went after.
Okay.
And I talked about, I jumped over the cage and asked to fight the following weekend. Like, that was planned the whole time, mainly because, the UFC, it's a ruthless world, and I wanted to get a quick turnaround, and there'd been nothing wrong with me.
Right.
It was just on their end, not giving me the number of fights that I wanted.
Right.
So that was kind of taken into my own hands, and when the opportunity knocked, wasn't about to turn it down.
Yeah.
Even though I was, after the first fight, my foot was a balloon,
Right.
and had some things that
I just remember back in the day with Chris, it was kind of like it's kind of a dictatorship anyway. So it's not like it's not like you have your promoter and boxing has the other promoter, and you can hash out deals. Like he says, you're gonna fight.
Yes.
He only hears no more than once, and then the next guy.
It's still pretty much that way. Yeah. And I don't know. I think
it's like that.
You'd have to say, I don't know, like if you were to say no to a fight, then you probably should.
I mean, from a fan's perspective,
yeah.
What's great about UFC is it's not like boxing where, you can pad your resume for a long time and then work out a big fight. He says, champion, number 1 guy, you go. It's not like champion fights number 20 and then number 18 and to build up this. That's why you don't see a lot of guys.
And they do have it a little bit like those guys that come in with the big. Undefeated or they've got a lot of hype. They do get, like, I know a lot of people that they'll get list of 10 to 15 guys. When do you want to fight? Here's your list to pick from.
Okay.
But those are the special McGregors and that type of thing. But the normal is they give you a date and an opponent, and you accept that.
Right.
But when you do stuff like what I did in October. After that fight, they asked me, when do I want to fight?
Right. Gives you a little more.
Finally, which, I think about it, and at first it was always like, try not to think negatively about it. But, after you prove yourself, you think, well, there is 1,000 guys trying to prove themselves in, in a world where there's 1,000 guys trying to even get in that spot. Yeah. So, it's
once you get in that spot, you don't want to give it up.
Right. So, but once you put in all that work to get to that certain spot, it's like, this is why it's so valuable to be in these.
Sure, but at no point in this particular specialty can you coast. I mean, it's not like I've made it. I'll just relax. Go to just keep grinding for the next guys. As soon as you lose 2 in a row, they're on to the next guy.
Right.
And then
they even cut people off of wins.
Yeah.
They're like, they won, and then they're like, sorry.
So, but that's any world, in any business world, you want to be the top.
Sure. Yeah, you guys are the top handful in the
Right.
world of what you do,
Right.
and there's always somebody coming up from below trying to knock you off.
Yeah, I mean that's in anything. You know?
Yeah.
So
Your big fight is in March against Dominick Cruz,
Dominick
who's
Cruz.
former UFC champion.
yep.
So
His last fight was for the belt.
Yeah.
And
I think I read that his last 6 fights have been for belts or something.
yep. So it's been a while. Actually, I think the night that you fought for the belt, he made a comeback. That was his last 3-round fight.
Yeah.
It was
Because didn't he have an ACL tear or something back
14.
in the way?
Yeah, so that was the big thing about Dominick is he made his run and became champion, and he was champion,
Right.
and then he never actually lost his belt.
Okay.
The injuries got the best of him,
Right,
and
right.
he had about a 5-year layoff. But
Right.
I think it was 3 ACLs.
Yeah.
Well, he got a cadaver, and it didn't take.
Yeah,
And,
the graft, yeah.
The graft, or whatever, right? So that was one of them, and then he was almost back and he tore his groin.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, he had like 4 or 5 years. And then he came back and he actually won a fight and then got his belt back
Okay.
after a 5-year layoff. So that's where most consider him one of the
Now,
greatest.
Why is he
weight
coming to
classes.
fight? He seems like a nice cush job as a UFC commentator, or is he just or
Uh,
does he just have that same thing that you guys have that you want to
Yeah,
fight?
you want to fight. And he's coming off of 2 losses, both
Yeah.
title fights.
Right.
But, I mean, he's getting there. He's 35, but,
Mhm.
there's still guys that are
Sure.
35, 40, between there, Chris, he's might get the kamikaze out of retirement. He's not 40 yet. Maybe we got till
Maybe
May.
for his birthday.
So maybe for his birthday, maybe birthday present.
Birthday
40
Birthday beating.
Yeah. So,
So where do you see if you beat Dominick Cruz? What does that set you up for? You think?
if I beat Dominick Cruz, I think top 10, top 5. I'm only 1 or 2 fights away from the title shot,
Okay.
and that's the ultimate goal.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? You think?
That's what I'm asking for. It's you got to reach for the stars.
Sure.
But there's the bantamweight division is cool. It's the first time really that the little guys have been getting recognition, and they even talk about it being the toughest weight class
Right.
in the UFC,
Yeah.
which is unheard of in
Sure.
the little guy
Sure.
realm. So also, what's cool is there's about half of the top 10 are legend fighters
Mhm.
that are just at the end of their career,
Sure.
and about the other half are up and
Right.
coming guys. So you got the battle of the legends and the up and coming guys all
Yeah.
throughout the bantamweight division. So those are always interesting fights.
Yeah. I mean, Chris fought probably 2 of the top pound for pound guys ever, in Henry Cejudo and Demetrius Johnson. I mean,
Right.
those are 2 names that
And I'm definitely trying to pull Cejudo out of retirement. So I was talking about that the other day. Well, I think
If you bark loud enough,
if I bark loud enough, he might come. He might
Like,
come.
This guy needs
So,
a pounding.
yeah, exactly. So I got some tricks up my sleeve. I've been working on. Plot. I'm always plotting. So
Okay, good. Well, I want to segue just a little bit to nutrition because we have a nutritional company, and I know Chris was telling me that UFC has you on a supplement plan. I mean, as MMA fighters, I mean, it's not for everybody because you guys are kind of the elite of where you are
Right.
in sport, but we're trying to get an idea of nutrition for every person. Joe Schmo who's just out walking his dog, or who's out for a run or a jog. What is important for supplementation and all overall healthy nutrition?
right.
I mean, is it something that you ever thought about before as a young guy? Because I remember I was a competitive cyclist way back when, 35 years ago, and nobody really thought much about nutrition. I mean, we ate Pop-Tarts and Fig Newtons and ham and cheese sandwiches is what we had in our jerseys, because the first day, Power Bar came out, I was there when we were sponsored by Power Bar.
Right.
They first came out with Power Bars. We thought that was the greatest thing ever, eating boxes of Power Bars every day, waiting for the new flavor to come out. But when I was young, we didn't think about it. When I went to the Olympic Training Center as a cyclist, they said, if the engine's hot enough, it'll burn anything. That used to be the old adage.
Right.
If you're riding your bike 6, 7, 8 hours a day, you don't have to worry about it that much. But now it's come forward 35 years where kind of more thought goes into it. I don't know when you were 20 if you put much thought into it. Versus
Actually,
now,
I
or-
knew nothing about nutrition until I met Chris.
Okay.
So I spent being an elite judo athlete.
Right.
Spent my whole high school career
Just eating whatever you wanted.
peanut butter and jellies, spicy nacho Doritos, and Mountain Dew.
All right.
And McDonald's. I mean, I grew up in small town Indiana.
Sure.
And
You had a 7-Eleven on the corner, and then you go to
we, you know, when I was eating healthy, my parents took me to Subway. I was an only child, so mom cooked and stuff. But being an only child, it's sometimes easy to just go get some fast food or TV dinner. And still to this day, my mom thinks a TV dinner with chicken and corn and
Mrs. Swanson's
is the same nutritional factor as cooking, a real meal. So I didn't know anything about nutrition until I met Chris, and I did cut weight, but the only way I cut weight up until then was all water.
Water weight,
right. So it was
put it right back on.
I used to in high school. I step on the scale with a bottle of water and my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and like, 1 pound, sweet, and that was how I measured it. Like, okay, well, I ain't gained a pound, so I got to sweat off a pound or 2 pounds, or that was how I judged my weight.
So, what did Chris teach you about nutrition, though? Or did you say start eating some vegetables and some meat?
Yeah, MMA is a little bit different also than like the wrestling. I guess judo is a little closer to MMA, where you got a tournament here, tournament there, where you weigh in. Wrestling we were making weight every weekend from November to February, and so the dieting was a little bit different. Like here, I start to diet and I start to bring my weight down with food and still hydrated, and then I get to a certain point where then I suck out the water and it's easier to come back, but. Really about carbs and fats and all that stuff. I need basically protein and fats to survive. I need to start pulling the carbs, that type of thing, to make a certain weight. You need to take in, if you want to gain weight, you need to take in more than you're putting out. Or
calories in, calories out. Simple.
To lose weight, you got to put more output than you are putting in. It's like when we were making 125, we used to run a crazy training camp.
A skeleton. 125.
We were on 1,000 to 1,500 calorie a day diet.
Now, were you weighing everything out, doing everything?
I never did that, but I just basically took what he did and modified it to fit me.
What was your philosophy on the nutrition part of it?
So I got big into first was the alkalizing, and then having a alkalized diet. So trying not to eat anything acidic type stuff. And now I don't care, but before, now. But before, that's what I was looking for, right? Because I was thinking about how am I going to recover the fastest, so I can train again. For my next training session, right? So. Eating the right way, eating the right foods, making sure, I was taking in the right nutrition so that I was outlined. Maybe no wheats and stuff, but even that is acidic, right? Your body would break down. So, so then, then once I kind of got into 135, wasn't really cutting weight, really, I would just diet down, eat small meals. And then I got to 125, and then that was that extra 10 pounds is a lot of weight, right?
Sure.
Especially when you're, at
when you walk around at 150.
When you're walking around 150, and then your body fat is not really that high. It's only 10%, so it's
it's water.
It's all water, right? So how are you going to diet down to 125? So that's when I had to really buckle down on exactly what I'm eating and exactly what was going in my body, how much protein. I would actually weigh it out, how much vegetables I was eating, how much everything, right? So, and I was trying to get my body to burn fat so that I can lose weight.
Use fat as a substrate.
Burn so I can start losing weight, right? So making my meals and then timing my meals correctly too, because there'd be times where I'd eat a meal too early, and then I'd have to train, and then I'll be starving, and I have no energy. And then, or if I didn't eat enough carbs for that training session, then I'm bonking because you're on such a restricted diet, right? That,
to make
everything,
energy to
to
train.
Exactly, right? And then, So
So do you guys supplement with anything? I mean, other than probably obviously protein drinks and that sort of thing, or?
Yeah, I've never been big on supplements.
Yeah.
I normally just took like the fish oil. Like I do like fish oil and a multivitamin.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now that with the UFC they have they partnered with Thorne.
Right.
They send me like I got a whole list of stuff, but mainly it's it's basically anti-inflammatory, fish oil, multivitamins, a couple like performance type things, but nothing too crazy.
Okay. Well, you're still young enough that most young people don't think about supplementation.
Right.
I think as you get older, you get beat up a little bit more. It kind of comes more into play in your recovery.
Even though I'm still only gonna be 29, gonna be
Right.
30, there was a major change from 24 around like 24, 25. There was a change that he told me about. And I never thought the day would come. I'd come in and like wake up out of bed, shake it off, and start fighting people. And
I can remember Chris at 30 waking up in the morning and walking like he was 75 years old because of all the pain in his joints from kicking and punching.
Yeah, that too. And
I mean, it's a sport that beats you up.
Right, beat you up, and then. But basically, what I learned is, I just have to take care of myself a little.
Sure.
I gotta eat right. I gotta get, the supplements. I gotta stretch out a little bit more, do all the rehab, recovery, and that's a big change in the MMA world that I've seen in the last 5 years. Like him and I come from backgrounds where overtraining, and they don't really have much for nutrition. Maybe now a little bit, but definitely not the Thais guys. They don't have nothing for nutrition or anything.
Yeah.
So, we brought that into MMA training, which is true, but now we're kind of just peaking for a certain day a few times a year. So there's a lot of things that can go into it instead of just killing yourself.
Right.
Day in, day out, sign of overtraining, which is very real.
Right.
That was basically a sign of weakness in the wrestling world, in the Muay Thai world, in the judo world. So that's the biggest thing that I've done. And we were just talking about it today. Like one of the guys that's fighting this weekend, Max Holloway, he's my age. Probably got more title fight experience than any champion right now.
Yeah.
His last 2 fights, he's done 0 hard sparring.
Okay.
And
just saving himself a little bit.
well, the last one was kind of forced with COVID, and he was in Hawaii, and they were super locked down. And, for one fight, he's like, "I'd just be in shape." He actually performed one of his best fights. So he's doing it again for this coming weekend, and him and I have switched gears on my training too a little bit. We're still putting in the work, but focus more on recovering if I'm down. Like I know I'm tough now. After all these years, and, there's a time and a place for young fighters or that type of thing. But now it's like I focus a little bit more on trying to feel good and peak. And there's certain times where I got to suck it up and train hard, but. If my nutrition's off, my sleep's off, something like that, it's going to probably affect me, a little bit, and that's where we alter the training a little bit too. So, learning on the fly type of thing.
Well, I appreciate you guys sitting down with us and talking about your philosophy on training and nutrition and kicking people in the head. And good luck to you, Casey.
Thank you very much.
Come March, and to Coach Chris.
March.
Hopefully, guys, you kick butt,
Yeah,
and we'll follow you again on the title fight coming up soon. I hope.
Yep. So we'll have to do this again before that one.
So I
So
appreciate it. Thanks.
sure, thank you guys.
Hi everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Mind and Body Active. Just a reminder that this episode is for educational purposes only. This podcast is not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. This podcast is provided on the understanding it does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. If you're looking for help on your journey, seek out a qualified medical practitioner.